Was he tired too?
No, not at all. Why, when he was young, he could moan and groan for days without stopping.
I wish I was like my father.
Well, there's no reason why you can't be, Wilbur. I'm going to have a talk with your teacher, Miss Spook, and maybe I can get her to agree that if you pass your haunting test on Halloween, she'll promote you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Animal.
But remember, Wilbur, you must pass the haunting test. No pupil in this school can be promoted unless he can haunt. Because if a ghost can't haunt, he might just as well be a human being.
Wilbur was all excited when he got home from school that night. He told his mother and father about the haunting test on Halloween and how, if he passed, he'd be promoted. They were so happy and so proud, Wilbur's father promised to let him use his oldest and rustiest set of chains to plank. And Wilbur's mother said she'd make him a brand new sheet out of ghostly white material. And Wilbur's old Uncle Henry, who'd given up haunting because the night air was bad for his rheumatism, offered to lend Wilbur 2 of his dried-up bones.
Oh, I never knew nothing that could scare the living daylight out of them human beings. Wilbur, is the rattling of the dry bones.
And so Wilbur was all equipped to pass his Halloween haunting test with high honors. An old rusty chain that clanked horribly. A brand new sheet that flapped in the wind. And bones so dry they made you shiver when they rattled. What more could any ghost ask? Wilbur was actually floating on air. Now he couldn't help but be promoted. The following night at Ghost School, Miss Spook gave the class final instruction.
Tomorrow, as you undoubtedly know, is All Hallows Day. And tomorrow night is Halloween. The one night in the year when ghosts and goblins are permitted to roam the earth. As is only proper, we are holding our final examinations tomorrow night, the night of Halloween. You will find your assignments posted on the bulletin board. Please note them carefully as you float out after class. Now we will have some practice in moaning and groaning. Wilbur, are you paying attention?
Yes.
All right, then. All together now. Moan. Groan. Moan. Groan.
It was almost dawn when Wilbur floated home from his last night at school before the final examination. He went to bed immediately, slept like a log, and awoke bright and late that same day, just as darkness was creeping over the countryside. He remembered, as he pulled his brand new sheet over his head, that his assignment was to haunt a little graveyard down by the railroad tracks, and at the witching hour of midnight, frighten any human beings who happened to come by. He washed his face with evening mist, brushed his teeth with ectoplasm, ate a big, huge bowl of ghost toasties with invisible milk, and was ready to leave. By that time, it was quite dark, a perfect night for haunting. Wilbur's mother and father floated down as far as the hollow with him. Then they disappeared, and Wilbur was left all alone. He drifted through the valley until he came to the tiny graveyard he was supposed to haunt. There he scurried around among the gravestones and markers, groaning and moaning, and clanking his chain, and flapping his sheet, and rattling his old Uncle Henry's bones. Why, haunting wasn't hard at all. There was nothing to it. In fact, it was great fun. Wilbur floated over the graveyard, wheeling and dipping, making believe he was a ghostly airplane. Suddenly, he stopped short in midair. 2 huge green eyes were staring at him out of the darkness. The next moment, he heard a sound that sent shivers up his spine. Again, he heard the strange, frightening sound. Wilbur turned pale as a human, and he would have floated out of that graveyard as fast as he could if his father's rusty old chain hadn't suddenly caught on a headstone. And it was lucky for Wilbur that it did, because the next moment the huge green eyes blinked, and a weird voice came out of the darkness.
Don't be afraid of me, little ghost. I'm just an old hoot owl. On Halloween, I start to send it people too.
And laughing deep down in his feathers, the old hoot owl flew off the limb of the tree on which he'd been sitting and vanished. Poor Wilbur, trembling like a leaf, loosened the rusty old chain, picked up his Uncle Henry's bones, he'd dropped them in his fright, and with a deep sigh settled himself on top of a large, flat gravestone and draped his sheet around him. He'd suddenly become very tired. He looked up at the sky. Now the stars were winking and blinking, and there was a quarter moon that looked like a silver watermelon rind. All was quiet and peaceful. So quiet and peaceful, in fact, that Wilbur completely forgot it was Halloween, that he was supposed to be taking his final examination. Oh, my, is that Wilbur yawning? Yes, it is Wilbur. And he's falling asleep. Wilbur's fast asleep, almost 2 hours before midnight, with most of his haunting left undone. What will happen now? Well, in a little while, the old hoot owl returned to his perch on the limb of the tree. He looked about for Wilbur and discovered him asleep on the gravestone. Now, he was a wise old owl, as owls usually are, and he knew that the last thing a ghost should do is fall asleep on Halloween. So he hooted and hooted until he was almost blue in the beak. But Wilbur didn't wake up. In fact, Wilbur didn't wake up for a long time. Not until a rooster on a nearby farm started to crow. Then he sat up with a jerk. He blinked 3 times. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and dawn was beginning to light the sky in the east. And there, seated on the iron picket fence surrounding the tiny graveyard, were his mother, his father, all the other ghosts and goblins, and, worst of all, Miss Spook, his teacher. Wilbur tried hard to hold back his tears. He hadn't meant to forget Halloween. He hadn't meant to fall asleep. He trembled as his teacher got off the picket fence and floated over to him.
Well, Wilbur, what have you to say for yourself?
I'm sorry, Miss Spook.
Is that all?
I didn't mean to fall asleep, but I was so tired.
That seems to be your trouble, Wilbur. You're always so tired. We've got to teach you a lesson. Any ghost who forgets Halloween and falls asleep in the middle of haunting must be taught a lesson. Let me have your sheet.
My sheet?
Yes, your sheet. Thank you.
I'm cold just sitting here in my bones.
That's too bad. You'll just have to get used to it. From now on, you're not going to be allowed to wear a sheet. You'll have to walk around in your bones until you prove to me that you have learned how to haunt without falling asleep. And until that time, you will not be promoted.
And so, boys and girls, and grown-ups too, this coming Halloween, if you should happen to see a sleepy little ghost walking around in his bare bones, remember that it's Wilbur Kennesaw Smith. He's looking for someone to haunt so that he can be promoted and get his sheep back. So if you do meet Wilbur, be kind to him and let him haunt you, won't you? And in case he should yawn right in the middle of the haunting, tickle him in the ribs to keep him awake, so that this Halloween, Wilbur can be promoted.
Please, let me haunt you.
And that's the story of the ghost who forgot Halloween.
That's not the kind of ghost story I meant.
Oh, didn't you like it, Johnny?
Oh, yeah. It was all right, but, I think it was wonderful, Johnny. The trouble with you is you always want creepy things. I'll always remember Wilbur from now on, and if ever I meet him, I will let him haunt me.
I'm sorry if I disappointed you, Johnny.
Oh, no. It was all right. One part made me laugh.
What was that?
The part where you said that Wilbur had a great big bowl of ghost toasties with invisible milk.
You wouldn't like that, would you, Johnny?
No, sirree. Wilbur can have his ghost toasties. I'll take real honest-to-goodness post toasties with the kind of milk you can see.
I can't say that I blame you, Johnny. As a matter of fact, like Wilbur, post toasties are so bubbly light they almost do float.
Have you ever tried post toasties with stewed peaches, Mystery Man?
No, I haven't, Ruth. Are they good?
They're wonderful. I have them with bananas lots of times.
Mystery Man,
Yes, Richard.
my friend's mother says that hot cereals are better for you than cold cereals in the wintertime. Is that true?
Not at all. It isn't the external heat of the food that counts. It's the amount of heat the food produces once it gets inside your body.
Oh.
Now, for instance, a glass of cold milk produces much more body heat or food energy than a cup of boiling hot water. Up around the North Pole, the Eskimos live all winter long on cold blubber and seal fat because it produces a great deal of body heat.
Carbohydrates produce body heat, don't they?
That's right, Richard. Certain elements in food are called carbohydrates, heat and energy-producing elements. Sugar's one of them, and starch is another, both of which you get in Post Toasties. So you tell your friend's mother that we'll match Post Toasties up against any other breakfast cereal, hot, cold, or lukewarm, for energy and for goodness, winter, summer, spring, or fall. And with all that, Post Toasties taste so good. Always crisp, always toasty brown, always bubbly light. Never soggy or mushy or lumpy. Right, Johnny?
You bet. Post toasties are top. Now, how about let's duck for apples?
I'm afraid we're not going to have time for that while we're still on the air because I want to tell you something about next week's mystery story.
Can't we even cut the Halloween cake and find out what kind of fortunes we get?
Do you want the fortune of the cake, Johnny? Confess.
Well, I could eat a hunk of cake.
All right, Ruth. Suppose you cut Johnny's piece so we can have his fortune told and, incidentally, wrap himself around some cake while I tell you about next week's story. It was on the stage of a supposedly haunted theater that the ghost of a great Hamlet was supposed to walk, hand in hand with death. The solution of the mystery escaped me until I realized that the only possible answer was the most obvious one of all. Next week, I'd like to see if you can guess, as I had to, the natural explanation of the seemingly supernatural phenomenon in the story I call Death Takes the Stage. Well, Johnny, did you find your fortune yet?
No. There's no fortune in this piece. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, here it is.
What is it?
Oh, it's the ring. Johnny's going to get married. Oh, boy, is a fortune. No